Toxic Politics in America's Anger Market by Bill Jones. Where we are and how we got here.
To understand the media world we live in today, the one where politics feels like a never-ending cage match, you have to rewind to the late 1980s and early 1990s. That's when talk radio went from a sleepy corner of the broadcast world to a roaring political theater, complete with heroes, villains, and a soundtrack of anger.
Before that, AM radio was fading, FM music dominated, and AM stations struggled to stay relevant. But the repeal of the Fairness Doctrine in 1987 changed everything. Until then, broadcasters had been required to present contrasting viewpoints on controversial issues. This rule wasn't always enforced perfectly, and conservatives often claimed it was used selectively. But it did prevent any one political perspective from completely taking over a station's public affairs programming.
Once it disappeared, political talk radio grew like wild weeds. It was cheap to produce, easy to syndicate, and incredibly profitable. And for the first time, hosts had something they'd never really had before: freedom to be as one-sided as they wanted. No rebuttals required, no counter-arguments needed. Just a microphone and emotion.
This was the opening Rush Limbaugh walked into. By 1988, Limbaugh's program was nationally syndicated on over 50 stations. Within a few years, it was on 650. Within a decade, he was reaching more than 20 million listeners weekly, numbers most cable shows today can only dream of.
If you've never heard early Limbaugh, you might imagine something angry and grim. It wasn't. It was ironic, theatrical, mischievous. He did voices. He played parody songs. He would read news articles out loud and add commentary in real time, almost like a sports announcer calling a political game.
And on top of all that, he had a brand, one he repeated daily: talent on loan from God.
People loved it. They loved the confidence. They loved the unapologetic conservatism. They loved the feeling that he was saying the things they weren't supposed to say out loud. Limbaugh once joked, half seriously, "I have half my brain tied behind my back, just to make it fair." That line alone tells you the tone. Swaggering, punchy, tongue-in-cheek, but ideologically sharp.
And conservative America responded. Listeners didn't just consume Limbaugh's show, they joined a community. Limbaugh even had a nickname for them: Ditto Heads, a term originating from callers saying "ditto Rush" instead of repeating long compliments. Before social media, before comment sections, before online communities, Limbaugh built a daily fan base using nothing but the AM band. The political establishment took notice. President George H.W. Bush hosted him at the White House. Speaker Newt Gingrich credited Limbaugh with helping Republicans flip the House in 1994 for the first time in 40 years. Some members of Congress were so dependent on Limbaugh's approval that staffers reportedly kept radios on in their offices to listen to his show. It's no exaggeration to say that Limbaugh changed the political landscape for the Republican Party.
The enemy as a storytelling device. One of Limbaugh's core techniques was something we now see everywhere: the creation of a narrative enemy. He didn't invent the idea. American politics has always loved a villain, but he perfected the daily cadence of it. On Monday, it might be the liberal media. Tuesday, environmental wackos. Wednesday, feminazis, a term that became infamous. The labels were intentionally provocative, but they weren't just insults. They were plot devices, too.
Talk radio was and is like a soap opera. The characters have to stay emotionally charged, day after day, crisis after crisis. Limbaugh turned Democrats, journalists, bureaucrats, and activists into a rotating cast of antagonists whose motivations were predictable. They hated America. They hated freedom. They hated you.
And here's the thing. It worked because it felt good. People aren't drawn to political information because of facts. They're drawn because it makes them feel something. Outrage, righteousness, belonging, clarity, entertainment. Limbaugh delivered all of that in 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, with commercial breaks for gold coins and weight loss pills. He created a blueprint thousands of others would follow.
The profit motive steps in. What happened next wasn't ideological, it was economics. Radio executives saw Limbaugh's ratings spike and realized something important. Anger wasn't just an emotion, it was a business model. If a host's job was to keep audiences tuned in through 12 minutes of commercials per hour, then emotional stimulation, especially negative emotion, was the easiest tool available. Fear keeps you listening. Outrage keeps you listening. A sense of crisis keeps you listening. This wasn't conservative or liberal, it was commercial. And it set the stage for the next revolution.
Enter cable news, the visual anger machine. By the mid-1990s, CNN had been the dominant cable news outlet for over a decade. It was calm, straightforward, almost soothing, some said boring. Ted Turner had imagined it as a global public service, a 24-hour newspaper you watched.
Then in 1996, Fox News arrived. Roger Ailes, a former Nixon and Reagan media consultant, saw something that CNN didn't. Conservatives didn't just want a seat at the media table, they wanted a channel of their own. The tagline, "Fair and Balanced," wasn't meant to describe what Fox already was. It was meant to imply what everyone else wasn't. The formula was simple: sharp opinions, emotional storytelling, a narrative of cultural conflict, a sense of grievance, and a lot of high-energy pundits.
If talk radio had Rush, Fox had its own emerging stars. One early and telling moment came when Bill O'Reilly told viewers he was tired of the spin and promised to bring them the no-spin zone. It became his brand, his signature. The implication, of course, was that everyone else was spinning. O'Reilly's show wasn't just news, it was theater. Confrontational interviews, fiery monologues, a clear sense of us versus them.
The ratings soared. Within a few years, Fox overtook CNN. By the early 2000s, it was the dominant cable news network in America. For millions of viewers, Fox didn't just shape their opinions, it shaped their identity.
MSNBC joins the fight. Fox's success created a competitive pressure the industry had never seen. CNN tried to stay above the fray, but its numbers faltered. MSNBC, launched the same year as Fox, was floundering. In its early days, the network tried everything: news blocks, tech shows, even a short-lived program hosted by Jesse Ventura.
But around 2005 to 2007, MSNBC found its answer: the progressive counterweight. Keith Olbermann's show, originally sports and news flavored, evolved into a nightly anti-Fox, anti-Bush-era liberal polemic. Rachel Maddow followed, then more liberal hosts. The network embraced a new identity. If Fox spoke to the right, MSNBC would speak to the left. And to be blunt, it worked.
Even executives admitted what was happening. One former MSNBC president explained that the network had to embrace the political identity of its audience just to stay competitive. Cable news had become something like a set of parallel church services. One conservative congregation, one liberal congregation, each preaching to their own separate choirs. At this point, the nightly news didn't look like journalism in any traditional sense. It looked like political talk radio with graphics.
The anger loop takes shape. Here's where politics and media really fused into a single ecosystem. Politicians learned something important. If you wanted donations, attention, or name recognition, you didn't have to pass legislation. Just go on TV and say something inflammatory. A revealing example came in the 2000s when some newer members of Congress learned that a 5-minute cable hit could raise more money than 6 months of committee work.
Cable news became their performance stage. Governing became their side gig. Viral clips mattered more than policy. Anger became currency. The cycle worked like this. A host needs emotional content to hold an audience. A politician needs attention to raise money. Both deliver anger, conflict, and oversimplified stories. Everyone benefits, except the public.
The audience hardens, and over time, a kind of emotional callus formed. If you watched Fox every night, you might believe America was under constant assault from elites, immigrants, activists, and bureaucrats. If you watched MSNBC every night, you might believe America was threatened by racists, authoritarians, billionaires, and religious extremists.
Listeners and viewers didn't just hear messages, They absorbed worldviews. Neighbors who used to simply vote differently now lived differently, ate different media diets, trusted different information sources, and saw the world through entirely distinct emotional lenses. One longtime radio consultant put it bluntly in an interview: "We stopped selling news years ago. Now we sell adrenaline." That line could apply to almost every major outlet.
The legacy of the anger era. The most important thing to understand is this: the anger wasn't accidental, it was engineered. Because anger keeps people glued to the product. Talk radio taught the media industry that emotion was profitable. Cable news took that lesson and scaled it nationally. Politicians adapted because they had to. Anger got results. By the time social media arrived on the scene, the groundwork was already laid. Facebook and Twitter didn't invent anger. They simply automated it with the help of algorithms. Talk radio and cable news built the anger machine. Social media turbocharged it. And we're all still living in the roar of that engine.